Rain hammered the windows, turning the living room into a storm of shadows and noise. My daughter's voice sliced through it all. "You're a burden, Mom. I can't live like this anymore." Before I tell you what happened next, hit the subscribe button and comment below where you are listening from. Tessa stood in front of me, trembling with anger. Her fiancé, Evan, leaned against the wall with a smirk that made my stomach twist. On the table sat an eviction notice, already signed. "You want me gone? From the house I bought?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You gave it to me," she shot back, arms crossed. "You said it was my future." Her words burned worse than the thunder outside. I looked around the home I'd built, every corner filled with memories, every wall painted with my hands. My daughter, the one I'd sacrificed everything for, couldn't even meet my eyes. Evan whispered something and she turned away. My chest felt hollow. "Tessa," I said quietly, "you'll remember who built your wings one day." But she didn't answer. I picked up my coat, stepped into the freezing rain, and walked out of my own house. I didn't know it yet, but that night, everything in my life was about to begin again. My name is Mara Cole, and tonight, at 58 years old, I became homeless. I sat in my old sedan outside the glowing windows of the house I'd once called home. I could see shadows moving inside, Tessa and Evan, laughing. My hands shook as I held the steering wheel. I had nowhere to go. The rain slowed to a whisper, and I thought about the years that led me here. The double nursing shifts, the nights I went hungry so Tessa could eat, the bracelets I sold to pay for her first semester of medical school. I used to believe love was enough to protect you from cruelty, but love, I learned tonight, could be weaponized. I leaned my head against the seat, exhausted. Dawn was still hours away. I had $50 in my purse, a phone with no charger, and one thought running through my head: how quickly devotion can turn into shame. When the first light touched the horizon, I whispered to myself, "You'll remember who built you, Tessa. One day, you'll remember." Then I turned the key, started the car, and drove toward nowhere, just to escape the ache. By morning, I was shivering in a small-town cafe, counting coins to see if I could afford coffee. My hair was still damp, and my clothes smelled faintly of rain and heartbreak. As I stirred the cup, a voice called from the counter. "Mara? Mara Cole?" I turned. A woman with kind eyes hurried over. It was Lydia, a former patient from years ago. She hugged me before I could protest. "You helped me after my surgery. What are you doing here?" The truth caught in my throat. "Just figuring things out." She looked at me for a long moment, reading the truth between the lines. "I've got a spare room," she said. "It's not much, but it's warm. Stay until you get back on your feet." Tears stung my eyes. I wasn't used to kindness anymore. That night, as I settled into Lydia's tiny guest room, she handed me a letter. "This came for you at your old apartment," she said. It was thick, from a law firm in my hometown. "Probably a mistake," I murmured. Lydia smiled. "Maybe it's something good for once." I placed it on the nightstand, unaware that the letter would change everything. I opened the envelope the next morning, my hands trembling. Inside was a typed message. "Regarding the estate of Julia Cole, deceased. My sister, Julia." I hadn't heard her name in years. She'd died suddenly 2 summers ago, and I couldn't even afford to attend the funeral. The letter said she'd left behind a small property, an old lakeside cabin. It was legally mine now. For a long time, I just stared at the words. I hadn't owned anything in years, not even the house my daughter threw me out of. Lydia came in with tea. "That's fate," she said. "Maybe it's time to start over." I looked out the window. The thought of returning to that lake, the place we'd spent summers as kids, stirred something in me. Fear, maybe. Or hope. That night, I packed my one suitcase. I left a thank you note for Lydia on the table and whispered, "If my daughter doesn't want me, I'll go rebuild what's mine." When I drove away before dawn, the letter sat on the seat beside me like a silent promise. The lake cabin looked like a ghost. The porch sagged under my weight, and vines crawled across cracked windows. The air smelled of damp wood and forgotten summers. I stepped inside and covered my mouth. The walls were covered in dust and memories. It broke my heart, but also, it felt like home. I knelt on the floor, tears falling freely. "I can fix this," I whispered. "I can fix me." For the first time in months, something stronger than despair took root: resolve. I rolled up my sleeves and began cleaning. Hours later, as sunlight poured through a broken pane, I found an old drawer stuffed with my sister's things. Inside was a faded photograph, me, and Tessa at the lake, smiling with sunburned noses. Beneath it lay a folded document, a property deed. My heart raced as I unfolded it. Julia hadn't owned just one lot. She'd owned 3 acres of untouched land around the lake. "Hidden acres," I whispered. Maybe this place was meant to save me after all. The morning after the fire, the smell of smoke still clung to my clothes. I swept up the ashes, refusing to see them as ruins. They were just a beginning. Ben showed up early. "You sure you want to keep going?" he asked. I nodded. More than ever. We spent the day rebuilding the damaged shed. Sweat dripped down my back, but every hammer strike felt like defiance. This land was my inheritance, my sister's gift, my rebirth. At sunset, I stood by the lake. The water rippled gold, and my reflection looked steadier than it had in years. When I went inside, my phone buzzed. Another message from Tessa, but I didn't open it. Instead, I stared at the growing frame of the cabin and whispered, "You took my peace once, but you can't take it again." That night, for the first time since I left that house, I slept without fear. By midsummer, the cabin had changed. Fresh paint, new windows. Life returned to its corners. Then came a letter from a social worker I'd met years ago. She asked if I knew of a place for a woman escaping an abusive marriage with her little boy. My heart clenched. I called her immediately. "Bring her here," I said. "I think I can help." When they arrived, the woman's face was pale with exhaustion. She hugged her son tightly. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. "Mara," I said, smiling. "Welcome to Julia's Haven." Her tears came fast. "Julia's Haven?" "My sister's dream," I said softly. "And now mine." That night, as they slept in the restored cabin, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace that didn't depend on anyone's approval. I stood on the porch under a full moon, whispering, "You see, Julia? Your dream is breathing again." By morning, the woman smiled for the first time. The retreat had begun. Word spread faster than I expected. By autumn, Julia's Haven had welcomed 3 women, each with her own story of heartbreak and rebuilding. One day, a local reporter visited after hearing about us. She took photos of the cabins, asked about my journey, and scribbled notes as I spoke. A week later, the article came out. "Widowed Nurse Turns Sister's Abandoned Cabin into Sanctuary for Women." The headline felt unreal. The photo showed me on the porch, smiling with quiet pride. That night, my phone buzzed again, notifications pouring in. Then I saw it. A comment from Tessa. "Guess you finally found something to do." The words stung, but not like before. I didn't reply. I simply turned off my phone and went outside. The moonlight shimmered on the water, and I whispered, "You can throw stones, Tessa, but I've already learned how to stand." 2 days later, I received a call. The number flashed familiar. Evans. When I answered, it wasn't his voice. "Mrs. Cole?" the voice said. "My name is Daniel Pratt. I'm an investor. I was hoping you could help me locate Evan Reeves." My chest tightened. Why are you calling me? He listed you once as a reference. We're trying to recover funds he stole. Over $200,000. Your daughter's name is on several of the accounts. I froze. What? I'm sorry, he said quietly. You should warn her. Things are about to collapse. After we hung up, I sat by the window, my hands cold. Evan had always seemed slick, but I never imagined he'd drag my daughter into something criminal. I drove into town that afternoon, staring at the phone in my hand. Should I call her? Would she even answer? Finally, I whispered, You may hate me, Tessa, but I can't let you drown. I called. No answer. I left a voicemail. You need to leave Evan now, please. That night, rain fell again, just like the night she threw me out. Only this time, I wasn't broken. I was ready. Tomorrow, I would face her one last time. Tessa opened the door with swollen eyes. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair messy, her confidence gone. Mom, she whispered. Her house was half empty, boxes scattered everywhere. Evan's gone, she said. The bank froze everything. I don't know what to do. For a moment, I saw not the woman who had betrayed me, but the frightened child I once held through fevers and nightmares. She swallowed hard. Can I stay with you? Just for a few days? The words echoed painfully familiar, like mine once had when I begged her for a place to stay. You called me a burden, I said quietly. Her lip trembled. I didn't mean it, Mom. Please. I looked around the empty house that once belonged to me. Then I nodded slowly. You can come, I said. But understand this. You're a guest now. Tessa began to cry, clutching her coat. I didn't comfort her. I simply turned toward the door and said, Let's go home. As we drove toward the lake, I realized forgiveness didn't erase pain. It just stopped it from owning me. Tessa moved into one of the small guest cabins, her shoulders hunched, eyes empty. The women staying at Julia's Haven greeted her kindly, but I could see her pride stiffen. She wasn't used to being humbled. She tried to act like nothing had changed. You should repaint the kitchen, she told me one morning. It looks cheap. I smiled faintly. Everyone here contributes, Tessa. We all clean, cook, and rebuild together. No one's above it. Her cheeks flushed. She didn't argue. That evening, I overheard the other women sharing stories by the fire about loss, abuse, recovery. When they mentioned how I'd built this place from nothing, I noticed Tessa standing in the hallway, silent, tears glimmering in her eyes. She slipped away before I could speak to her. Later, I found her sitting on the porch, hugging her knees. You did all this without me, she whispered. I sat beside her. I had to. You made sure of that. She didn't look at me, but her voice cracked. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. I just stared out at the lake. Some apologies needed to ripen before they meant anything. The next morning, Tessa helped serve breakfast. She moved slowly, uncertain, like someone learning how to be part of a team for the first time. After the guests left the dining hall, she turned to me. I need to tell you the truth, she said. I stayed quiet. It was Evan, she confessed. He told me you were holding me back. He said your sadness would ruin my career, that I had to choose between success and you. I swallowed hard. And you chose him. Tessa nodded, crying. He said you'd already given up on life. I believed him. I thought I was saving myself. I looked at her, my grown daughter, broken in ways I'd once been. Now you know what real burdens feel like, I said softly. Guilt weighs more than love ever did. She nodded. I want to help here, Mom. I want to do something good. I hesitated. I didn't know if it was guilt or genuine change, but it was something. Start by washing the dishes, I said. Everyone begins somewhere. She smiled faintly. Yes, ma'am. For the first time, I saw a spark of humility in her eyes, A week later, thunder rolled across the sky. Dark clouds gathered over the lake like bruises. "Storm's coming," Ben warned, helping us tie down supplies. That night, wind screamed through the trees, tearing shingles from roofs. Water flooded the path between cabins. I rushed outside with Tessa and the guests, hauling sandbags, shouting directions. For hours, we fought the storm together. Mud streaked our faces, but no one gave up. Even Tessa, drenched, trembling, kept working beside me. By dawn, the worst had passed. The retreat was battered but still standing. Tessa sank to her knees, exhausted. "I didn't leave," she said quietly. "Not this time." I looked at her and nodded. "I know." Later that day, as she helped clean up, she found a dusty folder in a cabinet, old legal papers from the house I once owned. One page caught her eye. "Mom," she whispered, handing it to me. "Why does it have your name?" And Evan's signature. My stomach dropped. It was a document transferring ownership of my old home to Tessa. But my signature was forged. I sat at the kitchen table, the document spread before me. My name, copied, crooked, false. Tessa's hands shook. "He did this before we even got engaged," she whispered. "He said it was legal." Anger burned through me, but not at her. I saw now how deeply she'd been used. The next morning, I drove into town to meet a lawyer. He examined the papers carefully. "This is forgery," he said. "Technically, the house still belongs to you." My heart pounded. I could reclaim everything I'd lost. But then he added, "If you pursue this, your daughter could be dragged into the investigation. Her name's on the deed." She could face charges, justice, or mercy. That night, I stood by the lake again. The water shimmered under the stars, calm after the storm. Julia's voice seemed to echo in my mind. Rebuilding doesn't always mean revenge. I closed my eyes. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I called the lawyer. "I'm not pressing charges," I said, "but I'll reclaim the house quietly. No court, no headlines." He agreed to handle the transfer privately. A few weeks later, the title was legally mine again. I stood before the house that once broke my heart. The walls were the same, but the feeling had changed. Instead of moving back in, I made a different choice. I donated it to Julia's Haven as a city branch, a safe home for women starting over. It felt poetic. The place that had thrown me out would now open its doors to others. When Tessa found out, she broke down sobbing. "You turned our worst memory into something good," she said. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Pain can destroy you, or it can build you. The choice is yours." For the first time, she didn't argue. That night, as I locked the door of the new shelter, I felt lighter than I ever had. I had lost everything once. Now I had something no one could take. Peace. Tessa came to me one evening, her face red from crying. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, hands twisting nervously. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness." I looked at her quietly. "Love isn't something to deserve," I said. "It's something to honor. You didn't honor it before." She wiped her eyes. "I know, but I want to now. I want to help. Can I stay here and work with you?" I hesitated, studying her face. For years, I'd begged for her love. Now she was the one asking for a place. "You can stay," I said finally, "but you'll have to earn it. Everyone here does." She nodded quickly, relief washing over her. "Thank you, Mom." That night, I stood on the porch, listening to the wind in the trees. Forgiveness wasn't a single act. It was something you rebuilt, board by board, like these cabins. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like the foundation. The next few months were filled with rebuilding, both homes and hearts. Tessa worked harder than I expected. She cooked meals, painted cabins, and listened to the stories of women who'd lost everything. I saw her slowly change. Sometimes she'd look at me across the fire pit, her eyes soft with regret. "You built this, Mom," she said once. "You built something beautiful." I smiled. We built it now. Julia's Haven grew. Donations arrived, volunteers signed up, and a local council member visited to praise our work. I even received a nomination for a Community Leadership Award. When I told Tessa, she smiled proudly. "You should let me introduce you at the ceremony." I hesitated, remembering the last time she'd used a stage to dismiss me. But this time, something told me it was right. "Okay," I said. "Let's show them what healing looks like." She nodded, tears glistening. "I won't let you down again." And for once, I believed her. The auditorium was full the night of the ceremony. Lights shimmered against polished floors. I sat in the front row, hands trembling, not from fear, but from pride. When they called my name, Tessa stepped up to the microphone. Her voice trembled at first. "I used to call my mother a burden," she said, her eyes finding mine. "But I was the burden, the weight of my own pride. She's the reason I stand here today. She taught me that love isn't weakness, it's strength." The audience went silent, then broke into applause. I felt tears spill down my cheeks as I joined her on stage. She handed me the plaque and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Mom." I hugged her tightly. For the first time, the words didn't feel forced or late. They felt right. That night, when the crowd was gone, I stood alone under the stage lights, whispering to myself, "You see, Julia? We finished it." The next morning, a letter waited on my desk, from a major donor wanting to expand Julia's Haven across the country. The donor's letter changed everything. They offered full funding to open branches in 3 new cities. I could hardly believe it. When I told Tessa, she threw her arms around me. "Mom, that's incredible." We sat at my kitchen table, just like old times, but now as equals. Together, we read through the documents, signing the partnership deal that would grow Julia's Haven beyond anything my sister ever dreamed. The donor said, "You built this from nothing, Ms. Cole." I smiled softly. "Not nothing," I said. "From love, from pain, from starting over." As we finished signing, I noticed Tessa watching me with quiet respect. "Mom," she said, "I need your help again, but this time, I mean it differently. I want to start a program here for young women in medicine, ones who can't afford it." My heart swelled. Then that's what we'll do. Everything I once owned, my house, my savings, even my heart, had been taken. But now I finally understood. Ownership wasn't about possessions. It was about purpose. Sunlight spilled over the lake as I sat on the porch, tea warming my hands. The air smelled of pine and promise. Down below, Tessa stood in the garden with a small group of women. She was leading a support meeting, her voice calm and steady. I could barely recognize the woman she used to be. She laughed softly at something one of them said, and the sound floated up like music. I smiled. "You've come full circle, my girl," I whispered. Ben waved from across the property, and Lydia stopped by with pastries. The retreat buzzed with life. Every corner of Julia's Haven carried a piece of my past and my healing. I thought back to that stormy night years ago when my daughter had called me a burden and thrown me out of my own house. I had left broken, but I returned whole. My revenge had never been to hurt her. It was to rise so high that I no longer needed her approval. As Tessa looked up at me and smiled, I whispered my final truth. She once called me a burden, but now she carries my lessons, and that's the weight I'll gladly let her bear.